I have a great pleasure to close this amazing conference. So let's get right to it. I'll take you straight to the moon. Back in the 60s, the computer, Apollo coordination computer, had roughly 1 megahertz of operating frequency. Today, the devices that we carry on us and in our pockets are thousands times faster and more powerful. The little silly AirPods, your earbuds, are more powerful than the first iPhone. iPhone on its own is as powerful as modern laptops. An Apple Watch is a powerful computing device on its own. Some people estimate that with just an iPhone, we could coordinate 120 million simultaneous missions to the moon. And I know what you can think right now. Some people believe that we never went to the moon. But for the sake of this presentation, let's assume that we did. So it seems that with the progress in computing, the opportunity is infinite. We can do everything. But somehow, the little things are actually stopping us. So since the launch of Apple Watch, I really like the idea of this device. Little thing that you can carry on your wrist, supposed to be very helpful. The first edition didn't really work. It was very slow, felt like an alpha edition. The third one really caught my attention. I really like the idea of having independent connection to LTE network. So I brought this device home. I showed it to my wife. She's not in tech. I showed her the device, the new face of the Apple Watch, and she asked me the question, what is this red dot, this ugly red dot? And she said, yeah, maybe you can remove that. And I didn't know what to do with that. I did not know what this red dot actually means. I felt slightly embarrassed working in design for the past 10 years. So I started to do some research online. I started to check, what is this red dot, mysterious red dot? And I've learned that it's actually a sign of unread, unseen notifications. That's even worse. I'm supposed to know this stuff, right? But in fact, this is how notifications are perceived on an iPhone. There's nothing, not a sign of a red dot. This is how notifications are presented on a MacBook. 0 red dots anywhere in the visible space. This is a sign of a very difficult and dangerous inconsistency in design. I felt slightly a little bit betrayed and definitely confused. It's not the only example, and I know we all love Apple, right, designers. I'm going to actually share another example from Apple. Siri, our beloved Siri. On AirPods, you gotta double tap one of the earbuds to launch Siri. On your iPhone and on your Apple Watch, you have to press the button and wait, press and hold. And on your Apple TV, there's a separate button on the remote. On your MacBook, there's a separate button in the interface of macOS. Very confusing, right? It gets even worse. We're here to talk about new interfaces. It gets worse with voice. So you can say, hey, Siri. Hope I'm not going to actually call somebody now. You can say, hey, Siri to your AirPods. You can say, hey, Siri to your iPhone. You cannot say, hey, Siri to your Apple TV or your MacBook. It's not going to hear you. So one of my design heroes, Massimo Vignelli, said that design is one. But with all this computational power, it seems that we are very far from that. It seems that with all the power that we have right now, design is actually further from that truth than ever. The thing is that we have to build the common language of creation. I'm Marcin. I'm CEO and co-founder of UXPin. UXPin is the full-stack UX design platform. Design systems, powerful prototyping, and documentation all together in one space in the cloud. We started this company here in Poland 7 years ago, if you can believe it, with a single mission, connecting design and development. This mission is still our current mission. We still chase the same dream. We have customers in over 150 countries all over the world. We are mostly focused on big companies, big teams, hundreds of people, companies like PayPal or Sapient. But having that said, smaller teams and individuals also use UXPin every day. Amazing team of 70 people work on the future of design in 2 offices, Mountain View, where I live right now, and Gdańsk in Poland. And when I was here on the stage of UX Poland for the last time, must have been 5, 6 years ago, my job was to manage designers and help empower them to create amazing experiences and great products. Today, my job is different. My job is really just thinking about the future of design and making sure that our team actually makes it happen. And it's not a lab research, so it's not like I'm sitting with a microscope and just thinking about all the details of experience. It's more like looking at the stars, understand where design is really going. Slightly over a year ago, I had a great pleasure to interview over 40 design leaders from some of the leading organizations in the world. And I asked them a single question. What is the biggest challenge that you and your team face every single day? What troubles you the most? The results were very consistent. They all had roughly the same answer, maybe expressed in different words, but roughly the same answer. We were very curious about this result, so we ran a survey with over 3,000 companies. And again, we asked this single question: what is the biggest challenge? And the top challenge is dealing with inconsistencies in UX, in design. So it's roughly what happened to me with the Apple Watch. This confusion that goes through the interface is actually touching the very nature of software development. It's slowing us down, it's confusing our users. And teams all over the world try to fight it. So what do they do about it? I think we all know. 70% of these companies build design systems. They're trying to just make order in this chaos with design systems. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Salesforce, they all started to invest significant amount of money into design system. And you can ask, how it's possible that Apple has all these consistencies and design systems. And truth to be told, it's just that they separate their design systems into chunks. So there's a different design system for Apple Watch and different for iPhone. Different thing when it comes to Microsoft Fluent, right? They have one design system, beautiful thing, really, that actually spans throughout their product portfolio. So what is a design system? As always in design, we have problem with defining anything, right? So instead of actually trying to come up with something really smart and really complicated, I just took a note of definitions that are actually part of documentations of design systems. Salesforce, one of the first mature design systems called Lightning. And they said that design system is a collection of patterns and established best practices native to Salesforce experience. I really like that wording, native to Salesforce. Ibm Carbon, an amazing design system launched earlier this year, said that this is a series of individual styles and components that when combined make beautiful, intuitive designs. And they really emphasize the logic of their design systems. Shopify Polaris, one of my favorite design systems, said that they build design systems to work together, to empower the team with collaboration. So design systems are really decisions and guidelines and resources built for empowerment of the team. And we analyzed over 40 publicly available design systems, and there's a very easy structure. You have your building blocks, the most fundamental things for anything designed. It doesn't matter if this is a digital interface or hardware. You have your colors, your typography, you might have your animation, everything that actually spans throughout everything that we design. Then typically you have patterns, right? You have little down elements of the interface, you have slightly bigger components, and then templates. And you have rules, and this is really important. You have guidelines, how to actually use all these pieces of the design system to build consistent interfaces. Let me show you some examples. This is straight from Shopify Polaris. You can see that their color palette is expressed in a visual way, so we can see the beautiful colors. But there's also a hex code for every single color there. And you can notice the little switcher that actually lets you see SAS variables. So there's connection to code. And then Shopify tells their designers and partners how to actually use these colors so you can create great experiences for your users. Another example, IBM Carbon. Again, visual expression of the pattern, a button, right? We all design buttons all the time. And a code snippet that informs developers how to actually render this button in a browser. So in a design system, there's a strict connection between design and code. And we keep discussing, should designers code, right? This question is being asked all the time. It doesn't really matter in the world of design systems, because this connection is part of the very nature of a design system. And for the user, the only thing that matters is the button, the thing that they can interact with, the thing that actually leads them to their desired action, the thing that builds the experience. They don't care about the underlying code. They don't care about their design assets because they experience this one thing in Unity. And this is really the connection between these two worlds, design and code. It is the user experience. And what I really like to call this whole Unity is that design is like spoken and written word. The same concept, interactive button, a form field, a table, expressed in two different ways. Code and design assets. Exactly like our language. We can speak and we can write, but we are always expressing the same concepts. It's the nature of communication. Because design is structured like a language. And in fact, design is a language. And whenever we are designing experiences, it's all about communicating with the end user. To see that, we have to break design into pieces. We have to see the fragments that actually build the entire experience of users. So how to do that? I applied, if there are any linguists on the room, please leave. It's going to be terrible for you. So I'm definitely not a linguist, but I try to actually take some of the terms from linguistics and apply that to design practice. So the language, the most fundamental piece in the language is called morpheme. Have you ever heard of that? Anybody? Morphemes? There's some linguists for sure here. I should run. Okay, so morphemes are the smallest pieces that actually carry any meaning. I'll give you an example. The word unbreakable. 3 morphemes. It's very easy to understand. Un means not. Break means to break, right? And able means that something can happen. Together, unbreakable can be actually broken, right? It's very easy. Unbreakable is a word, carries the meaning. And this is what a word is. In isolation, the word actually have the meaning. And then we have perhaps the most complex part of our language, which is the discourse. This is our communication. Like in the sentence, let's make design unbreakable. So what does it mean for our practice, right? For our craft, for actually building amazing interfaces? What does it mean? So this is a sign-up form from our homepage. And you can see that there's an interaction between the user and the interface. Something is actually happening. User can click on something, and then the interface actually responds, providing the meaning. And if you think about the morphemes, the little pieces that actually affect the experience of users, you can see that there are colors, right? And colors, as we know, always carry some meaning. We have your border radius. We have the border on the input field. We have the font family. Typography also informs the user experience. And we have some animation, right? So on their own, they don't really mean anything. But together, they actually create the experience of users. And we can move to the level of words. And now we have a button, perhaps a primary button, and it's expressed visually as a part of the interface. It's expressed as a piece of code, in that particular case, piece of our React component. And we have an input form, input field. And again, it's visual, and it's also a piece of code, right? And users can interact with that. And together, we are starting the conversation with our users. So we are inviting them to actually try out our service. So they can enter their email and get access, right? Okay. But why does it really matter? Why this is important? It's important because the world is significantly different today. And we have to find the connection point between all these different devices. So we have to understand what the experience actually consists of at the very fundamental level. And we've seen the great presentation from Microsoft, Dave from Microsoft. And they started with motion, with materials, with light, the most fundamental pieces of anything that exists in the world, right? The morphemes, if you will. In the world of digital interfaces, the world of software, we are talking mostly about colors, typography, space, animation, some movement. And all these pieces actually create, or let us create, great user experience. So if you think of it, the red dot from the Apple Watch It's really a single word, and maybe a whole sentence about notifying users about what's going on in the ecosystem. And if they could apply that single discourse across all the devices, I wouldn't be confused, and their users wouldn't be confused about the meaning of the red dot, right? So it's almost like the conversation that they started, it's inconsistent, right? Every device talks in different language, and it's very hard to understand. So if we can find these common pieces across all the devices, finally we can actually build conversation that is consistent, a single language of creation for our own ecosystem of products. And great news now, the technology is ready. The technology is already out there. You could tell me, okay, but pattern libraries were around for years. And in software development, patterns are even older than pattern libraries in the user interface. So what happened? What really changed in the world that now we are talking about design systems, and now all of a sudden all these companies invest money? Well, I got to tell you that technology really changed over the past couple of years, and with the influence of JavaScript on our own practice, everything really changed. Facebook starts to build React. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And all of a sudden, modules from JavaScript are everywhere, and we want to use them. And that's really informed how we are building user interfaces today. So the world keeps changing, and now the question is, are we ready as designers? Can we build how we're supposed to, with the smallest pieces of our practice in place and codified? So first thing is controlling the morphemes. How can you actually do that? Must have been already 3 years. Gina Bolton from Salesforce co-created a thing called design tokens. And design tokens, the concept is very easy. The concept truly is that you can take all the stylistic values, all your colors, all your border radiuses and borders, and anything that's really fundamental to your work on the user interface. And you can close this code into objects, either JSON or YAML, but that's actually not that important. So you close this stuff into objects, and why? Because first of all your styles are in one place. And second of all, you can actually run a translator, and you can build all the styles for all the devices from a single object. So there's an open source tool called Salesforce Theo. And Theo takes this object with styles and actually gives you styles ready for iOS, for Android, and for the web from a single source. So as you can see, you can actually control how interface is presented on all the platforms from a single location. So the error is actually less probable. But companies actually went much, much further with components. I'm going to show you something that's really inspiring to me. When one component can actually live in multiple environments. Airbnb does a fantastic job on design and development. And what they started to do is they created very basic so-called primitives in the user interface. So the most fundamental components you can think about, like a text element. And the text element is going to be rendered on mobile devices and in the web from the very same piece of code and from the very same design asset. It's almost unbelievable, but they render their components directly from code in Sketch. So designers actually use code without knowing how to code. The world is changing so quickly. And it's not your old-fashioned what you see is what you get kind of tool. It's actually the real production code just rendered as a design asset. And whenever there's a change in this component, it's going to actually render in the very same way or adapted way on mobile devices and on the web. So the red dot from the Apple Watch would likely not exist because there would be one component responsible for notifications across all these devices. And this is all powered by React.js from Facebook. Started with web, iOS and Android got covered, and now, this year, they announced React VR. So what Airbnb did for web and mobile now can actually be extended all the way to VR. You can have this very same components controlled from a single place when it comes to their visual styling and render that in the VR world. So it's the world of one system is the systemic future in which design can be controlled from a system. This week, I had a great opportunity to speak at the World's Usability Congress, and also hang out with great people from some of the leading companies. And throughout the conference, we realized that all of us, we all talk about design systems. And that was just a general purpose design conference. Every single of the speakers from these companies, they had a design system in their slides. And also what they had in common, they were talking about design system across different devices, so they can cover everything, from mobile through web to VR. And some of the design systems out there, and trust me, there's definitely over 100 right now coming from really big companies, they cover things in a very surprising way. One thing that I wanted to show you is coming from Audi. So Audi decides to codify the movement so they can have consistency whenever they're presenting a car speeding up a button in an interface or any other component, so they can represent the concept of moving fast through space. I think it's pretty amazing, the maturity of the thought process that they applied to that. And something that I like in particular here is that, as you can see, there's a curve of the animation expressed in code as well. So anybody can use that. It spans from CSS to After Effects, right? It's really an accomplishment for us designers and our whole field in which we can actually think about the experience of developers so they can apply whatever we create, right? Or better, maybe we can create that together. That would be ideal. I really like what you can find on the Microsoft Fluent website when they predict that this is the future of design. We are starting a new way of building products, which starts with a system, universal language, that we can apply across all the devices and build a great, powerful conversation. And this little watch, I do hope that in the future, there's not going to be any problems with that, but who knows? It's all up to us, designers, to actually control the conversation in a way that empowers our users and let them actually understand our devices in a better way. There's a question that, of course, as you can imagine, it's really significant to me, the question of tooling. So is there tooling for this new age? Because it's definitely not your or our old-fashioned image-based design tools. The way we used to design is going to significantly change over the next couple of years. It's not going to start with a vector. It's not going to start with a raster graphic. Because why would it if we have this connection between design and code? So I want to show you a couple of things from the very early days of the tooling. Because this is something that, frankly, is going to evolve over the years. Oh, can't see that. Can we get the browser on the screen? That's the part that I actually cannot fake, so you have to see it. No? Let's see if I can do it on my... Oh, there we go. Oh, but you know what? That's going to be very difficult. All right, I'll try to do it looking at the screen, so it's going to be... Oh, they changed something. Nice, thank you. Okay, let's try it. Super excited to show you that, so give it a try. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to recreate this little panel over here, right? And I don't want to redraw everything. I don't want to copy it. I just want to apply the components that exist in the design system. So here's what we are going to do. Oh, And now the Wi-Fi itself as well. We'll deal with that. Hold on just a second. Would probably ideal to share some joke or something, or spicy story, but that's the part that I did not prepare. So just hold on a second, get a connection, and we'll work.
I recommend switching to a PC.
All right.
Ta-dum.
Let me just come back here. Okay. All right, I'm back with the connection, so it's much better now. Okay, so here's what we are going to do. We need to recreate, drag and drop a couple of buttons. We have our mini design system. So let me show you the little thing that I created for this presentation. It's a really teeny tiny design system. It basically has some of the basic elements, right? So we have our tab bar from our interface. You can interact with it. It has some documentation, right? Something for our designers and developers so they can experience or understand what really we are trying to do with this particular pattern. There's a connection to code, right? So there's a component from our React environment, something for the developer to actually quickly apply whenever they see this tab bar. A couple of other little components. So if you will, our words in our language, right? And then we have some of the building blocks, some of the parts that actually run through all these components so we can build them, right? So a couple of basic colors used here. A couple of textiles, right? And a library of icons, right? So all the icons that we like. Okay. So there you go. So we have our design system. And now, how we can use that, right? So in the old way, we'll just go and redraw everything, look at the documentation, and just move to copy stuff. But that would be a waste of time, right? So what we want to do, we want to just drag and drop a couple of buttons from here. So we have our button for the grid. It's going to be very hard to align with this position, but you can see how easy it is. Just drag and dropping stuff. And what else do we have here? We have our select, right? So we'll just leave it here. Okay. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to stop here and show you the design. So I can actually show you something really special that's going to happen right now on the back end. So what UXPin does is, first of all, build the prototyping interactions. So you can click on stuff and interact with buttons. You can move between tabs. We didn't build that. It's just part of the design system. And the best part is that on the back end, UXPin is recognizing these elements. Once we'll click here, we'll get an information that this is something from the design system. So you can actually get documentation. So including the snippet of code. So we're building the connection between design assets and code automatically. So you don't have to document anything. You don't have to spend time redlining. You don't even have to spend time adding interactions to components that you use across all the products, right? Across all the platforms. You can just drag and drop stuff, and it works out right now. And you have access to all the documentation, right? So as we click on the button, UXPin is going to tell us, okay, this is a button from the design system. And developer will get an information, okay, this is the React components, this is the button called Ghost, right? And it exists there, and you can just apply it right now. So you can think like, okay, where is this going? So this is going towards the strict connection between development and design. So we can build better experiences faster. And so we can build experiences for multiple devices with the very same components and apply them automatically throughout experiences. So this is, in our opinion, the future. This is what we are going to build for the next couple of years, and this is where the industry is going. And it is an exciting future, a future in which we can actually serve our users the best experience possible across all these worlds of new interfaces. And with that, I want to thank you, and I'm ready for your questions. Thank you.
Anyone? All right.
Nice.
Hi. I have one question. Today we spoke a lot about VR and AR.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how would you explain response to prototyping for VR and AR?
Yeah, this is an exciting space, and frankly, there is no solution right now for VR and AR on the market at all. And UXPin and other companies, I'm pretty sure, we are going to address that. But right now, the problem is the size of the market. If you think of it, it's pretty early on. Just get the first applications, and we don't really get the mass audience yet. So I had a nice chat with VP from HTC, and there's definitely a need, but for just a couple of companies. But we are definitely thinking about it. And this movement is going to be necessary in a couple of years, I'm absolutely sure. AR and VR, now we know, they're going to happen, and they're going to be huge. So tools are going to emerge, but as designers, we need to actually be a little bit patient, because it's not a trivial thing. So it's going to happen, and I do think it's going to be very important for AR and VR worlds to actually look at JavaScript as one of the common languages that can be applied to creation of these experiences. And this is basically the line of thinking that we are applying right now. Hope that helps.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hi, Marcin. Thanks for the presentation. I wish to ask, when can we expect a tool that we designers will be handling the code, meaning it will export production-ready code, HTML, CSS, and developers will be able to handle the API connection, and when we will change something, they will have it in their Git. And since it's 2017 and we do not have it yet, and there are a lot of in-a-web solutions already, what is the main challenge? Because apparently nobody did it yet, and everyone is exporting not a production-ready code.
Exactly. So for many, many years, we're all dreaming about a tool that actually let us manipulate objects visually and export the production-ready code. The problem was always the same. The problem of the definition of a production-ready code in different environments, in different companies. So something that might look nice and clean in one environment might be actually not acceptable in another one. So this dream is, honestly, a little bit, it's going towards the end. And there's a new thing, and I think Airbnb started it, which is actually not exporting the production-ready code, but importing the production-ready code. So designers can actually use components which are derived from the production-ready code, and then apply the manipulation on the component, which is going to be synced. The manipulation is going to be synced with code. So it's kind of like your question in reverse. You know, instead of actually exporting, we are importing. And this is something that's going to happen in the next year, maybe two, who knows. But we are going to see definitely production tools that are going to just feed on code and empower us designers to build experiences with something that is fully in sync with development environment. And Airbnb uses their little tools on production today. They take their components from React and just render them in Sketch, manipulate them, sync them back, and it works. So it's kind of like a proof of concept for the industry, but it's going to happen. It's super exciting. Thank you.
One more question. A few more questions, I think.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I was just wondering, because there are still differences between the system patterns that the users are used to, for example, in Android and iOS, and how do you think that React will influence the differences between the platforms?
Right. The most fundamental thing is always to comply with the standards of the platform, right? So you cannot push iOS experience on Android. We all know that. Designers were trying to do it without too much of a good effect with web apps, right? So now it's all about actually finding a connection point, right? What we like to always do is find the smallest common thing and then apply it first to components which are native to platforms. It's an interesting thing with React Native, which actually compiles to production-ready native code for Android and iOS. And you have to be very mindful of the differences in platforms. But technically, for anything that is not derived from the platform and doesn't actually touch the convention of the system, you can use the very same components, right? So it's a little bit of a game and back and forth, but we're going towards a more unified experience.
So still you would suggest to just divide the elements of the design system?
Especially things like navigation components, right? You have to comply with the standards of the platform. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, guys, I think that's it.
All right, thank you so much.